Chris Rock built an empire out of pain. From Bedford-Stuyvesant streets to the world's biggest stages. Now, facing cancer, he is confronting the hardest punchline of his life with the same unflinching courage that defined every chapter before it. He has made the world laugh for more than 4 decades. He has stood before packed arenas and delivered lines so sharp they drew blood. Lines about race, about marriage, about the quiet hypocrisies of American life. And watch thousands of strangers howl in recognition, in release, in the kind of laughter that only surfaces when the truth has been named out loud. He is Christopher Julius Rock, born in a small South Carolina town and forged in the fire of Brooklyn's hardest streets, a comedian ranked among the greatest in the history of the form. And now, at 61 years of age, he is fighting the most difficult battle of a life that has never been short of them. In February 2026, Chris Rock publicly confirmed what he had been managing in private: a diagnosis of colon cancer. The announcement, delivered with characteristic directness and shorn of self-pity, stunned a public that had watched him weather the Oscars slap, 2 divorces, a learning disability, a mental health crisis, the death of his father, and the near loss of his mother. Rock has never pretended his life is easy. What he has always done, with an almost stubborn brilliance, is transmute difficulty into art. Whether this latest, most serious test of his resilience will follow the same arc remains to be seen, but the man is fighting. And the world, once again, is watching. To understand Chris Rock the comedian, one must first understand Chris Rock the child, small, skinny, the eldest of 7 siblings, moving through a world calibrated to diminish him at every turn. He was born on February 7, 1965 in Andrews, South Carolina, to Julius Rock, a truck driver and newspaper delivery man, and Rose Rock, a teacher who would later work as a social worker for individuals with mental disabilities. Julius's own father had been a preacher, a man of words and congregation, and so language, persuasion, and performance were woven into the family's DNA from the start. When Chris was still a toddler, the Rock family relocated north, first to Crown Heights, and then to the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York, Bed-Stuy, as it is universally known, one of the most densely populated and economically strained communities in the city. It was a neighborhood of stoops and corner stores, of block parties and block dangers, of extraordinary human resilience, compressed into a few dozen square miles. Chris Rock would absorb all of it. He would later turn every bit of it into comedy that resonated across the entire country. But the formative experience that would most profoundly shape him, the one he has returned to again and again in interviews, specials, and therapy sessions, was not growing up in Bed-Stuy itself. It was being removed from it every morning and bused to schools in predominantly white neighborhoods of Brooklyn, a product of the racial integration busing programs of the era. His parents, determined to give their eldest son a quality education, enrolled him in a school far from home, in a community where he was categorically unwelcome. My parents assumed I'd get a better education in a better neighborhood. What I actually got was a worse education in a worse neighborhood, and a whole bunch of ass whippings. The bullying began in 2nd grade and did not relent. He was, for much of his school career, the only black child in his grade. He was called racial slurs. He was beaten. He has alluded in interviews to forms of abuse that he has declined to fully characterize publicly. He described those years on The Howard Stern Show as a horrible existence, comparing them, half in sorrow, half in black humor, to Tim Robbins' ordeal in The Shawshank Redemption. The white school his parents sent him to was located in a neighborhood so hostile to integration that it might as well have been a different country. It was, in every practical sense, a trauma. And yet, because this is also part of Chris Rock's story, the trauma became something. During an appearance on Inside the Actors Studio, Rock told host James Lipton that bullying was the defining moment of my life. It made me who I am. He went further, expressing a kind of gratitude to the boys who had made his early years miserable. The adversity had forced him to be quick, to be sharp, to read rooms and find exits, and construct narratives out of pain before the pain could consume him. Bullying without love, he told one interviewer, you can be destroyed. But I was bullied, and I had love at home, so that was kind of the perfect storm for me. His father, Julius, was that love. Chris Rock has spoken of his father with a reverence that borders on the sacred. The man who drove trucks through the night and delivered newspapers at dawn, who worked without complaint, who showed his son through daily example what it meant to carry weight without crumpling under it. Rock had planned, upon dropping out of James Madison High School in 10th grade, the bullying had by then become impossible to endure, to obtain his commercial trucking license and follow his father into that world. He would haul freight. He would be a man like Julius Rock. That plan never materialized. Instead, he waited tables. He bussed dishes. He worked short-order counters. He drifted through minimum wage jobs in the New York food service economy. A young man of extraordinary intelligence with no credential to prove it and no clear path forward. He had always been funny, compulsively, constitutionally funny, but funny had not yet become a career. It was simply the way he survived. Humor was the armor he had assembled piece by piece through years of being the wrong kind of person, in the wrong neighborhood, at the wrong time. It fit him perfectly. He just hadn't yet realized it could take him anywhere. The turning point came in 1984 when the 19-year-old Rock began performing stand-up at Catch a Rising Star, a comedy club in Manhattan that had served as a launching pad for a generation of comics. He was raw, nervous, and electric. He had a voice, a perspective forged in the specific crucible of his childhood that was unlike anything else working those rooms. New York comedy audiences could feel it even before they could fully articulate what they were watching. One night, the audience included Eddie Murphy. Murphy was already one of the most famous people on the planet, the king of Beverly Hills Cop, the incandescent star of Saturday Night Live's recent golden era. He saw Rock perform and recognized something in the young man immediately. Murphy befriended him, mentored him, and gave him his first film role, a small part in Beverly Hills Cop 2, 1987. It was a launching pad, a signal to the industry that this young comedian from Brooklyn was worth watching. More was coming. In 1990, Rock joined the cast of Saturday Night Live, the institution that had made Murphy famous and that remained the most prestigious stage in American television comedy. His time there was complicated. He has spoken about feeling underused, about the difficulty of finding his voice within SNL's particular machinery. But it was also formative. The discipline of weekly live performance, the necessity of landing jokes in real time before a studio audience, the exposure to the full infrastructure of professional American comedy, all of it accelerated his development in ways that solo touring could never have. Rock won 4 Emmy Awards, 3 Grammy Awards for Best Comedy Album, and hosted the Academy Awards twice, in 2005 and 2016. Comedy Central ranked him 5th among the 100 greatest stand-up comics of all time. Rolling Stone placed him 5th on its list of the 50 greatest stand-up comics of all time. He left SNL in 1993, joined the short-lived In Living Color on Fox, and found himself, briefly, at what he has called the lowest point of his professional life. He was headlining shows where the opening act received more applause. He was performing material that wasn't clicking for audiences that weren't connecting. The momentum that had begun with Murphy's mentorship seemed to be dissipating. Rock, who had survived Bed-Stuy and busing and bullying, who had clawed his way into the consciousness of American comedy, was facing the possibility that the industry might simply pass him by. His response was to go back to work. He hit the road. He played small clubs and medium clubs and any room that would have him, returning to the fundamental act of standing before strangers and telling the truth in ways that made them laugh. He honed and refined and threw out and started over. He was building toward something. He could feel it, even if he couldn't yet name it. And in 1996, that something arrived. Bring the Pain, Rock's second HBO comedy special, is one of the most celebrated hours in the history of the form. Recorded at the D.C. Armory in Washington, it covered race relations with a ferocity and intelligence that startled even those who thought they knew what comedy could do. It won 2 Emmy Awards. Variety called it one of the truly remarkable hours of comedy ever to air on television. It transformed Rock from a respected but largely unmarked stand-up to the front burner of comedy's future. He was 31 years old. He had been grinding in relative obscurity for 12 years. And now, suddenly, he was the funniest person in America. What followed? Bring the Pain was a decade of sustained, remarkable productivity. Rock hosted his own HBO talk show, The Chris Rock Show, from 1997 to 2000. A program celebrated for the depth and quality of its celebrity interviews and its willingness to probe politicians with genuine journalistic bite. He released the best-selling book Rock This in 1997. He appeared in Lethal Weapon 4, 1998, starred in Dogma, 1999, and produced the memorable comedy CB4, for which he also wrote the screenplay. His subsequent HBO specials, Bigger and Blacker, 1999, Never Scared, 2004, Kill the Messenger, 2008, and Tambourine, 2018. Each added to the canon of his work, a body of material addressing race, gender, politics, class, and the interior life of Black America with a complexity and honesty that put him in conversation with the great social comedians of any era. He won 3 Grammy Awards for Best Comedy Album. He hosted the Academy Awards in 2005 and again in 2016. Rolling Stone and Comedy Central both ranked him among the top 5 greatest stand-up comedians of all time. He also created, produced, and wrote the semi-autobiographical sitcom Everybody Hates Chris, which ran from 2005 to 2009, and drew directly from the experiences of his Brooklyn childhood. The show was a critical and popular success, introducing a new generation to a fictionalized version of the very stories Rock had been processing in therapy and transforming in his stand-up for 2 decades. It was also, in its way, an act of healing, a means of revisiting the pain of Bed-Stuy and the white school and the bullying and giving it a shape that could be understood and even, at moments, laughed at. His film work was equally expansive. Appearances in the Madagascar animated franchise, in which he voiced a zebra across multiple installments, a striking dramatic turn in the 4th season of the prestige anthology series Fargo, the crime thriller Spiral, Legacy of Saw, 2021, and Top 5, 2014, which he wrote and directed himself and which many critics considered his most personal cinematic statement. In front of and behind the camera, Rock was restless, productive, and creatively ambitious in ways that belied any easy categorization as simply the stand-up guy. I have a job I love, and people I love more than anything. What would I spend the money on? The greatest luxury I've ever known is purpose. His style, sharp, satirical, unflinching, politically engaged, has always made him a polarizing figure in certain quarters. He has been criticized for material about Black communities that some found divisive. He has been celebrated by others as the most honest voice in American comedy precisely because he refused to grant anyone, including his own community, an exemption from scrutiny. He covered the 1996 presidential election for ABC's Politically Incorrect. He was awarded a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2003. He built an estimated net worth of $60 million from a career that started with minimum wage dishwashing in a Brooklyn restaurant. He did all of this while carrying, largely in private, a set of interior struggles that were only beginning to come into public view. In 2020, Chris Rock made a disclosure that surprised many of his fans and colleagues, though in retrospect it explained a great deal about his interior life and the particular texture of his comedy. During an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, he revealed that after undergoing 9 hours of cognitive testing prompted by a friend's suggestion that he might have Asperger's syndrome, he had received a diagnosis of nonverbal learning disorder, or NVLD. NVLD is a neurological condition characterized by difficulty processing nonverbal social cues, facial expressions, body language, tone of voice, even while maintaining strong verbal and analytical abilities. Those who live with it often excel in language-based domains, in precisely the kind of pattern recognition and verbal precision that makes for extraordinary comedy writing, while struggling in one-on-one social situations that require the intuitive reading of nonverbal information. Rock described it with characteristic candor. "I hear the words, but if you're mad at me, if you're feeling a certain way, I might have a hard time picking that up." The diagnosis carried an unexpected gift. Not a cure, but an explanation. Decades of social difficulties, of relationships that had felt strained in ways he couldn't articulate, of a persistent unease in interpersonal situations that his stage confidence had always masked, suddenly had a name. "All I understand are the words," he told one interviewer. His comedy, he reflected, had always worked better than his relationships, and now he understood why. The stage was a controlled environment where communication was one-directional, where words were everything, where the nonverbal feedback of an audience could be read in its simplest form: laughter or silence. Off the stage, in the complex, reciprocal, emotionally layered world of real human connection, the disorder had cost him dearly. He responded to the diagnosis with the same seriousness he brings to his craft. He committed to 7 hours of therapy per week, an extraordinary investment in self-understanding for a man who had spent much of his career using humor as a substitute for self-examination. Through those sessions, working with 2 therapists, he began confronting childhood trauma that had been dormant for decades: the bullying, the beatings, the racism, the experiences he had turned into punchlines without ever truly processing his wounds. "I thought I was actually dealing with it, and the reality is I never dealt with it. The reality was the pain and the fear that brought me. I was experiencing it every day." He had learned to perform being okay long before he learned to actually be okay. Before his NVLD diagnosis, he had described himself as having a squirrel-like energy, always alert, always scanning for threat, unable to fully relax. After therapy, after the diagnosis, something in him settled. "That's gone," he told The View. "I'm much more relaxed now." It was a small miracle of self-knowledge, the kind that only arrives after years of avoiding it. The NVLD diagnosis also, in retrospect, illuminated one of the most widely discussed moments of his public life. On March 27, 2022, at the 94th Academy Awards, Rock was hosting when Will Smith walked on stage and slapped him across the face, responding to a joke Rock had made about Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, and her shaved head, a consequence of the hair loss condition alopecia. The moment was seen by hundreds of millions of people around the world. Rock stood there, stunned, joking his way through the shock even as the shock was still arriving. Many observers noted that he had appeared not to see the aggression coming, that he had read Smith's approach as friendly rather than hostile, right up until the moment of impact. His NVLD, his documented difficulty reading nonverbal cues, may explain exactly why. The slap became a cultural Rorschach test. Debates about comedy's responsibilities, about provocation, about public violence, about black masculinity, erupted across every available platform. Rock, to his considerable credit, absorbed the moment with dignity. He told his next audience that he was still processing. He performed his next scheduled tour, Selective Outrage, on Netflix in 2023, a record-breaking live streaming event, during which he addressed the slap directly, with the kind of precision and venom and comedic control that only years of craft can produce. He did not play victim. He named what had happened and what it felt like, in front of the whole world, with a microphone in his hand. He turned once again the worst moment into material. The personal architecture of Chris Rock's life has been as complex and difficult as anything he has put on stage. His father, Julius Rock, the man he had wanted to emulate, the truck driver whose example of quiet endurance shaped his son's entire moral compass, died in 1988 when Chris was 23 following surgery for an ulcer. The loss arrived at a pivotal moment. Rock was still in the early, uncertain phase of his comedy career, still working menial jobs alongside the club dates, not yet the person that Bring the Pain would make him. Julius never saw the star his son became. "When your dad dies, you know you're alone," Rock told Rolling Stone. "And there is something about your dad dying that makes you go, what's the point?" The grief reoriented his worldview in lasting ways. "After I lost my dad, I realized that none of us should take things too seriously, because everything except death works itself out." It was a bleak philosophy with a liberating application. Nothing short of mortality deserved to be treated as catastrophic. It gave Rock permission to be honest about darkness, in his comedy, in his relationships, in his self-presentation, in ways that more comfortable lives rarely produce. In 1996, at the height of the momentum following Bring the Pain, Rock married Malak Compton Rock, a philanthropist and social activist. They had 2 daughters together, Lola Simone Rock, born in 2002, and Zara Savannah Rock, born in 2004. The family lived in Alpine, New Jersey, in a home that became famous for its size and appointments, a long way from Bed-Stuy. To the public, they appeared to be one of Hollywood's more grounded couples, a star who had not let success erase the values of his working-class upbringing, a wife who was devoted to humanitarian work, 2 daughters being raised with evident care and attention. But the private reality was far more fraught. In 2016, after 20 years of marriage, Chris and Malak Rock divorced. Rock has been disarmingly candid about his culpability. He admitted that he had been unfaithful. He acknowledged that he had not been a good husband. The NVLD diagnosis, which came years after the divorce, cast retrospective light on the interpersonal patterns that had strained the marriage. His difficulty reading emotional cues, his disconnect between verbal facility and relational presence, the way a mind built for solo performance had struggled within the cooperative architecture of partnership. None of this excused his choices, but it offered context for a man trying, late and in earnest, to understand himself honestly. His mother, Rose Rock, was simultaneously navigating a cancer diagnosis of her own during the divorce proceedings. Rock has spoken about the almost surreal horror of that period, visiting his mother for cancer treatment at Sloan Kettering in New York, then walking to his divorce lawyer's office on the same street. "I thought that was the most evil street in the world," he told Rolling Stone. Rose Rock survived. She remains alive, a woman of considerable wit and strength who has, like her son, never permitted adversity the final word. Rock's half-brother, Charles Liddell Rock, was less fortunate. Charles experienced homelessness and struggled with addiction throughout his life, and died in 2006. His death was a quiet grief that Rock has addressed rarely in public, one of the few chapters of his story that comedy has not yet found a way to transform. His surviving brother, Tony Rock, is also a comedian, a man navigating the particular gift and burden of following a sibling of such towering reputation into the same profession. Chris Rock is a comedian renowned for his satirical approach to society, politics, and race. He has dissected America's hypocrisies with the precision of a surgeon and the irreverence of a street corner philosopher. He has been humble, plain-spoken, and stubbornly courageous throughout a life that has tested him repeatedly and in ways that would have broken a lesser person. In the weeks and months leading to February 2026, he had been quietly managing a health situation he was not yet ready to make public. Then, he was ready. The diagnosis was colon cancer. In February 2026, Rock confirmed it to those close to him, and then, characteristically, to the wider world. After that, he has said, I was monitored very closely. The understatement is vintage Rock, a 5-word sentence covering the terror of what it means to receive a cancer diagnosis, to submit oneself to the machinery of oncology, to sit in waiting rooms with the knowledge that everything you have built, every joke, every performance, every relationship, every hard-won self-understanding, now exists in a condition of radical uncertainty. The monitoring began. So did the fight. Everything I am living through right now is a gift. Every second I'm here. I have people I love more than anything in this world. What followed, what continues to unfold as of this writing, is a life reorganized around the rhythms of cancer treatment, chemotherapy sessions, their attendant waves of nausea and exhaustion and pain, the particular dread of radiology appointments where doctors search for evidence of spread. Rock has spoken with startling directness about the emotional texture of treatment. I feel like throwing everything away, he has said. I often cry just to free myself. Every time I go to the radiologist, it is a form of torture. Will they find another tumor? That fear, those images, those white coats? I don't want to go through any more of it. He has described personality changes that the experience of serious illness commonly produces. An uncharacteristic aggression, an impatience that feels foreign to his usual temperament, a depression settling over him like a second illness alongside the primary one. I became more aggressive, more impatient. That is completely unlike me normally, and I became depressed. Nothing seemed possible anymore. For a man whose entire adult life has been organized around the premise that something is always possible, that pain can become a joke, that adversity can become a special, that nothing is so dark that it cannot be illuminated by language. Depression is a particularly cruel torment. His physicians have given him a prognosis of 3 to 5 years. It is a sentence, in both senses of the word, that most people receiving it would be forgiven for failing to survive emotionally, even as they fight physically. Rock's response, delivered with a clarity that is either hard-won wisdom or a courage so deep it looks like wisdom, has been to frame the prognosis not as a condemnation, but as a clarification. Everything I am experiencing now is a gift, he has said. The remaining time, however long it proves to be, has acquired a vividness and a preciousness that the ordinary duration of a life never quite achieves. In the weeks and months following his diagnosis, Rock has engaged in the sobering administrative acts that serious illness compels. He has prepared a will. He has set his affairs in order. These are not the actions of a man giving up. They are the actions of a man who has spent his entire life confronting the truth, however uncomfortable, and who sees no reason to stop now. The will is not a surrender. It is, in its way, another act of honesty, a refusal to pretend that mortality is something that happens only to other people. I could lose control, he has said, with the dark comic awareness that has characterized everything he has ever done. Withdraw all the money from my account and spend it all. But on what? I have a job that I love, and people I love more than anything. The people are his daughters, now in their early 20s, Lola and Zara, the young women he shaped and was shaped by in return, who grew up watching their father absorb the complexities of celebrity and divorce, and public humiliation and private grief, and emerge each time with the microphone still in his hand. They are, by all accounts, an extraordinary source of meaning for him in a period when meaning is the only currency that matters. He remains vocal about one aspect of his current experience with particular urgency: the importance of others in similar situations seeking treatment. "I encourage those who are ill to find ways to get treatment," he has said. "I want to live the rest of my life to the fullest." The statement is characteristic. Chris Rock has always been more interested in what his experience can do for others than in what it means for himself. Comedy, at its best, is an act of service. The comedian absorbs the world's confusion and pain and returns it to the audience in a form they can bear. Rock is doing the same thing with cancer. He is absorbing it, processing it, and offering back the parts that others can use. His public candor about his diagnosis and prognosis is itself a gift, the specific kind that only becomes possible after decades of practice at telling the truth about hard things. In an era when public figures often manage illness behind carefully curated walls of privacy, and publicists, Rock has chosen transparency. Not for attention, not for sympathy, but because he is at his core a person who has never been able to pretend that things are different from what they are. The NVLD diagnosis, the divorce, the slap, the bullying, the grief. He has spoken about all of it, not because disclosure is always easy, but because silence has never suited him. Cancer is no exception. 4 Emmy Awards, 3 Grammy Awards, 2 Academy Awards hosting ceremonies, 2 daughters, 1 diagnosis that is changing everything, and 1 comedian still absolutely determined to find the joke in it, because that is the only way he has ever known how to live. There is a photograph widely circulated from one of Rock's recent appearances, taken after the diagnosis became public. He is smiling. It is not the performative smile of a man projecting wellness for the camera. It is something more complicated and more honest than that. The expression of a person who has practiced over 60 years and through circumstances that would have toppled most anyone, the difficult art of being present in his own life. He looks like a man who knows exactly how much time costs and who has decided, whatever time remains, not to waste a single hour of it. The man who grew up being beaten for the color of his skin in the hallways of a Brooklyn school. The man who bussed tables and washed dishes until Eddie Murphy saw something in him that changed everything. The man who turned his broken marriage into material and his fractured childhood into the finest television sitcom of its era. The man who stood stock still while being slapped in front of 1 billion people and found the composure days later to take the microphone back. That man is now fighting cancer with the same impossible, specific, irreplaceable courage he has brought to everything else. And even in the stillness of the treatment room, in the silence that follows a difficult prognosis, in the private moments away from any stage and any audience, one suspects that Chris Rock is still listening to the room, to himself, to the words, still looking for the angle that makes the unbearable human, still searching for the truth that, once named, sets the audience free. "I want to live the rest of my life to the fullest." What does it mean to be a comedian facing a terminal diagnosis? It means perhaps that the instinct to find the punchline never truly quiets. That even in the valley of the worst kind of shadow, the comedic mind keeps turning things over, looking for the angle, because that is simply what it does. Rock has not ceased to be a comedian because he has cancer. If anything, the diagnosis has intensified the qualities that made him great: the honesty, the unwillingness to comfort himself with pretense, the insistence on looking at exactly what is in front of him, even when what is in front of him is devastating. He has made his will. He has prepared his affairs. He has told the world what he is facing. He has gone, publicly and on the record, to the most vulnerable place a person can go. And he has done it without armor. That is its own form of comedy, really. The ultimate commitment to the bit, which is the bit of being alive, which is the only show any of us are really running. His daughters will inherit a father who loved them more than his career, and a career built on the refusal to pretend. The audiences who have watched him for 40 years will inherit a body of work that has made them smarter, more honest, more willing to see themselves clearly. The world of comedy will continue to grapple with what he has contributed to it. The way he expanded the form, the way he weaponized truth, the way he took everything the world threw at him and turned it into something that a stranger in a theater could recognize as their own. Chris Rock was born in Andrews, South Carolina, and raised in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. He was beaten in the hallways of schools that didn't want him. He dropped out of high school and washed dishes and made it anyway, all the way to the top of every ranking his profession has ever produced. He loved and he failed at love, and he tried to understand why, and he tried again. He buried his father and nearly lost his mother. He was slapped on live television before an audience of hundreds of millions. He was diagnosed with a learning disorder in his 50s and spent 7 hours a week in therapy trying to understand himself for the first time. And now, at 61, he has cancer, and he has told the truth about it, and he is fighting. The laughter in a life like his was never just laughter. It was survival. It was translation. It was the form that pain took when Chris Rock got hold of it and refused to let it win. That is what is at stake now. Not just one man's life, but the particular, irreplaceable way that one man has always found a way to make his life mean something beyond itself. The show for Chris Rock has always been about more than entertainment. It has always been about the truth, and he is not done telling it yet.